In ancient Athens, Socrates would walk through the marketplace questioning men about their lives. He noticed something that disturbed him deeply. Successful merchants, respected craftsmen, and prominent citizens would tell him they were living good lives. But when he asked them why they chose their path, they had no answer. They were doing what their fathers did, what society expected, what brought them status. Socrates realized these men had never actually examined whether this was the life they wanted. They were living on autopilot, following a script written by everyone except themselves. He said the unexamined life wasn't worth living because these men weren't really living at all. They were performing. They had paid the price of not choosing yourself. What Socrates observed reveals something uncomfortable about how most men operate. We believe we're being responsible when we constantly sacrifice our needs for others. We think we're being strong, dependable, the guy everyone can count on. But what's really happening is we're avoiding the terrifying responsibility of deciding what we want and going after it. Claiming your own path means declaring that your life matters, that your dreams deserve pursuit, that your boundaries deserve respect. And that declaration makes you visible. It makes you accountable. It opens you up to judgment and rejection. So instead, we hide behind service to others. We make ourselves indispensable to everyone else's agenda, while our own life withers in the darkness. We call it being a man, but it's really fear dressed up as duty. Watch how this plays out in the everyday. There's the man who works late every night because his boss might need him, while his own business idea stays trapped in a notebook. There's the guy who always helps his friends move, always covers shifts for coworkers, always says yes to every request, but can't remember the last time he did something just for himself. There's the father who provides everything for his family, works himself to exhaustion, but never pursues the goals he had before marriage and kids came along. These men look busy. They look important. They look needed. But if you watch closely, you'll notice something's missing. There's no fire in their eyes, no hunger, no direction that's truly theirs. They're living on autopilot, responding to other people's emergencies, other people's timelines, other people's definitions of success. And every day that passes, they become more of a function and less of a person. The mechanism that keeps this going is invisible but powerful. Your brain has learned that meeting other people's needs gives you immediate validation. Someone thanks you. Someone needs you. Someone tells you you're reliable. That hits your nervous system like a drug. But claiming space for yourself gives you nothing in the short term. It's lonely. It's uncertain. There's no one patting you on the back for setting a boundary or pursuing your own goal. In fact, people often get angry when you start prioritizing yourself because it disrupts the role you've been playing for them. So your brain learns to associate self-sacrifice with reward and self-priority with punishment. Over time, this becomes so automatic that you don't even realize you're doing it. You genuinely believe you're just being responsible, just being dependable, just being a good man. You don't see that you're actually avoiding the harder work of building a life that belongs to you. The world doesn't respect people who refuse to claim their own lives. It uses them. Employers pile more work on the person who never says no. Friends lean hardest on the person who never asks for support in return. Family members expect the most from the one who always gives. And here's the cruelest part: nobody actually admires the person who abandons themselves for others. Deep down, people sense the desperation in it. They feel the resentment brewing beneath the surface. They know you're not really giving freely. You're bargaining. You're hoping that if you sacrifice enough, you'll finally feel valuable. You'll finally feel appreciated. But that day never comes because the validation you're seeking can only come from one place, and you're the only one who can give it to yourself. Underneath all this responsibility and selflessness, something dark is growing. Resentment. Not the loud, obvious kind that gets expressed in arguments. The quiet kind that seeps into your bones. You start keeping score. You notice who doesn't call you back. You remember who didn't show up when you needed them. You catalog every time you sacrificed, and no one seemed to care. And the resentment isn't really about them. It's about you. It's about the choice you keep making to betray yourself. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own needs, every time you smile through the exhaustion and the emptiness, a small part of you dies. You're angry at them for taking advantage of you, but the real anger is for yourself, for not having the courage to stop, for not standing up and saying that your life matters too. Then something shifts. Maybe you get sick and suddenly can't be there for everyone. Maybe someone you sacrificed everything for leaves anyway. Maybe you just wake up one day and realize you've been living someone else's life. Whatever the trigger, awareness enters. You start seeing the pattern for what it is. You notice how you minimize your own needs in conversation. You catch yourself apologizing for things that don't require apology. You feel the automatic impulse to fix everyone's problems before they even ask. And for the first time, you pause. You sit with the discomfort of not immediately responding to someone's need. You practice saying, "I can't right now," without following it with an elaborate excuse. You start treating your own time, your own energy, your own goals with the same respect you've always given to others. It feels selfish at first. It feels wrong. But slowly, something else emerges beneath the guilt. Something that feels like coming home. Two paths appear in front of you now. The first path is familiar. You can go back to being the person everyone relies on, the one who never causes problems, the one who makes everyone else's life easier at the expense of your own. You know how to walk this path. You've been walking it your whole life. It's smooth and well-worn, and everyone approves when you stay on it. But you also know now where it leads. To exhaustion, to resentment, to a life that was never yours. The second path is rougher. It requires you to disappoint people, to let them down, to stop being who they need you to be so you can discover who you actually are. Some people will leave when you take this path. Some will get angry. Some will call you selfish. But the ones who matter will understand. And more importantly, you'll finally meet yourself for the first time. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that you could leave life right now, so let that determine what you do and say and think. He understood that the prison we find ourselves in is almost always one we've built with our own hands. Every time you shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable, you're giving consent to your own diminishment. Every time you prioritize someone else's peace over your own truth, you're agreeing that you matter less. Every time you abandon your needs to meet someone else's demands, you're teaching the world exactly how to treat you. The cage isn't locked. The door has been open this entire time. But walking through it means accepting that you're the one who's been staying inside. And that choice, that fundamental choice about whether your life belongs to you or to everyone else, is the only one that really matters. Knowing this isn't enough. Understanding that you've been living for others doesn't automatically free you. You need to start thinking for yourself, and most people have no idea how difficult that actually is. We think we're independent thinkers because we chose our career or our hobbies or our political opinions. But if you trace those choices back far enough, you'll find they weren't really yours. They were suggestions that became convictions. Your father mentioned engineering pays well, and suddenly that's your major. Your friends all watch certain shows, and now those are your favorites too. Society said success looks like a house and a car and a promotion, and you never questioned whether you actually wanted those things. Independent thinking isn't about being contrarian or rejecting everything you were taught. It's about examining each belief you hold and asking yourself honestly whether you chose it or whether it chose you. The first step is recognizing how deeply programmed you are. Every commercial you've ever seen, every comment from your parents, every expectation from your teachers, every norm in your friend group has shaped what you believe is possible, desirable, and acceptable. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just how culture works. But here's the problem: most of this programming happened when you were too young to filter it. A 5-year-old doesn't have the critical thinking skills to question whether he should care about impressing strangers, or whether money equals happiness, or whether he needs to be tough all the time. He just absorbs it. And that absorbed programming runs your life decades later, making decisions for you, limiting your possibilities, keeping you in line. You can't think independently until you see the invisible chains first. Start by questioning everything you think you want. Not in a nihilistic way, but in a curious way. Why do you want a bigger house? Strip away the obvious answers about comfort and space. Go deeper. Is it because you genuinely need more room, or because you've been taught that success means upgrading? Why do you work the hours you work? Is it because the work demands it, or because you've accepted that being busy equals being valuable? Why do you spend time with certain people? Is it because they enrich your life, or because you've known them forever and change feels uncomfortable? Most people never ask these questions because the answers might require them to admit they've been living someone else's version of a good life. But until you question your desires, you'll never know which ones are actually yours. Independent thinking also means getting comfortable with being alone in your opinions. When you start examining your beliefs, you'll discover that many of them only made sense because everyone around you agreed with them. Take those beliefs into isolation. Test them without the social reinforcement. Do they still hold up? Or were they just comfortable lies that everyone agreed to believe together? This process is lonely. You'll have thoughts that your friends don't understand. You'll make choices that your family questions. You'll pursue goals that society doesn't recognize as valuable. And there won't be a crowd cheering you on because crowds only cheer for things they recognize. But this loneliness is the price of authenticity. You can have the comfort of the herd, or you can have a life that's actually yours. You can't have both. The goal isn't to become some isolated philosopher who rejects all social norms. The goal is to consciously choose which norms serve you and which ones don't. Maybe you examine marriage and decide it aligns with what you want. Great. But now you've chosen it instead of just following the script. Maybe you examine your career and realize it's hollow, painful, but now you can change direction instead of waking up at 50 wondering where your life went. Independent thinking doesn't guarantee you'll make perfect choices. It guarantees that your choices will be yours. And when you fail pursuing something you actually wanted, it hurts less than succeeding at something you never cared about in the first place. Start thinking for yourself, even if it means standing alone. Especially if it means standing alone. Now here's where most people get stuck. They do the work. They examine their beliefs. They figure out what they actually want. They have clarity for the first time in years, and then they do absolutely nothing with it. They have the insight, but they don't act on it, and an unacted insight might as well not exist. There's a psychological phenomenon at play here that most people don't understand. You don't need a hypnotist to control your mind. You don't need some external force programming you against your will. All it takes is for you to accept an idea and become convinced it's true. Once that happens, that idea has the same power over you as a hypnotist's command has over a hypnotized subject. It doesn't matter where the idea came from. It doesn't matter if you consciously chose to believe it. If you've accepted it as true, it controls your behavior. Think about the ideas you've accepted without questioning them. I'm not the kind of person who starts businesses. I'm too old to learn new skills. I need financial security before I can take risks. People like me don't do things like that. These aren't facts. They're suggestions that you've elevated to the status of truth. And once you believe them, you'll find evidence everywhere to support them. You'll remember that time you tried something and failed, conveniently forgetting the times you succeeded. You'll notice other people who fit your narrative and ignore the ones who contradict it. Your brain becomes a lawyer arguing for limitations you never consciously chose to accept. The hypnosis is complete, and you're the one who hypnotized yourself. The scary part is how reasonable these limiting ideas sound. They're not obviously false. They're dressed up in practicality and wisdom. Be realistic. Don't get your hopes up. Focus on what you're good at. These sound like mature, responsible thoughts, but they're prison cells disguised as common sense. When you accepted the idea that you need to be realistic, what you really accepted was that you should limit your ambitions to what feels comfortable. When you accepted that you should focus on your strengths, what you really accepted was that growth is dangerous and you should stay small. The hypnotic suggestion doesn't need to be dramatic to be effective. It just needs to be believable enough that you stop questioning it. Breaking this hypnosis requires you to act before you feel ready. The idea, "I can't do this," only has power because you've never tested it. The moment you take action, you introduce doubt into the belief system. Maybe you can do it. Maybe you're not as limited as you thought. Maybe the story you've been telling yourself was wrong. Action is the only thing that breaks the spell because action generates evidence that contradicts your limiting beliefs. You can't think your way out of mental prison. You can't logic your way into confidence. You have to move and let the movement prove your old ideas wrong. Every small action you take is an act of rebellion against the hypnotic suggestions you've been living under. Here's what you need to understand. Your current beliefs about yourself are not discoveries. They're decisions. At some point, you accepted an idea about who you are and what you're capable of, and that acceptance shaped everything that came after. But decisions can be unmade. Beliefs can be updated. The hypnosis can be broken, not through affirmations or positive thinking, but through action that contradicts your old story. You believe you're not disciplined. Act disciplined for one day and watch that belief start to crack. You believe you're not creative. Create something terrible and watch the belief that you can't create at all begin to crumble. The idea only controls you as long as you never challenge it with behavior. The moment you act, you're free. So here's the hard truth. Everything you've learned about yourself, everything you need to do, every insight you've gained means absolutely nothing if you don't move on it. You can understand that you've been living for others. You can realize you've been hypnotized by limiting beliefs. You can see clearly for the first time what you actually want from life. And if you don't act on any of that, you're just a well-informed prisoner. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. Understanding without execution is just philosophy. You haven't changed anything. You've just given yourself new things to think about while your life stays exactly the same. This is the final trap. The illusion that knowing is enough. Trust action, not words. There's a reason why action is so hard. Moving requires you to trust something uncertain. You're stepping away from what's proven and predictable into territory you don't control. You're risking failure, embarrassment, wasted effort. Your brain hates this. It would rather have you stay stuck in certainty than move toward possibility. So it floods you with doubt. It reminds you of every time you've failed before. It generates fear so vivid you can feel it in your chest. And most people listen to this fear. They wait for it to go away, for confidence to arrive, for the perfect moment when action feels safe. But that moment never comes. Fear doesn't disappear when you're standing still. It only fades when you move despite it. Life doesn't happen in your head. It doesn't happen in your plans, your insights, your moments of clarity. Life happens at the level of events, at the level of what you actually do when the alarm goes off, when the opportunity appears, when the fear tries to stop you. You can have the most beautiful vision for your life, the clearest understanding of your purpose, the deepest commitment to change. But if you don't act on it, none of it exists in reality. It's just a story you tell yourself to feel better about staying the same. The only thing that matters is whether you move, whether you take the call, whether you have the conversation, whether you start the project, whether you set the boundary. Events are the only truth. Everything else is noise. This is why you need to start judging yourself by what you do, not by what you intend. Intention is cheap. Everyone has good intentions. Everyone wants to be better, do more, become someone they're proud of. But the distance between intention and action is where character is revealed. When you say you're going to wake up early and you don't, that's not a scheduling issue. That's a character issue. When you say you're going to have a difficult conversation and you avoid it, that's not about timing. That's about who you are in moments of discomfort. Your actions are a mirror showing you the truth about yourself. And most people don't like what they see, so they focus on their intentions instead. They judge themselves by the person they want to be rather than the person they're being. But reality doesn't care about your intentions. It only responds to your actions. Start tracking what you actually do versus what you say you'll do. Write it down if you have to. At the end of each week, compare your intentions to your actions. The gap between them is the gap between who you think you are and who you actually are. And that gap will either humble you or it will wake you up. Most people see the gap and make excuses. They explain why circumstances prevented them from following through. They list all the reasonable obstacles that got in the way. But successful people see the gap and adjust. They either change their intentions to match their behavior, or they change their behavior to match their intentions. They refuse to live in the fantasy land where wanting something counts as doing something. They trust only their track record, only their history of actual execution, only their pattern of showing up when it's hard.